Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever stood in front of a mirror not to fix your hair, but to ask yourself one honest question? Is this the person I was meant to become? You see, we live in a world full of clocks, but very few people take the time to look at their own compass. Most people drift not because the wind is too strong, but because their anchor is too weak. And I came here to tell you something very simple. The major key to your better future is not the economy, not your past, not even your talent. The major key to your better future is you. That's right, you are the pivot point, not your boss, not your parents, not the government. The day you realize this is the day your life begins to change. And if you'll give me just a few minutes today, I promise to hand you the very key that can unlock the next chapter of your life. You know, I used to think that if I could just change my boss, or change my job, or maybe even move to a different town, somehow everything in my life would suddenly get better. I thought the circumstances were the problem. The economy, the weather, the politicians. But one day, someone handed me a mirror instead of a complaint form. And that day, I started the most important project of my life. Me. The truth is, your life doesn't get better by chance. It gets better by change. Not out there, but in here. You see, if you want to change your income, change your skills. If you want to change your relationships, change your attitude. If you want to change your results, change your philosophy. And that begins with one hard but liberating truth. Your life changes when you do. I remember when I was 25 years old, broke and embarrassed. My checkbook was empty. My promises were even emptier. And all I had was a long list of excuses. But then I asked myself, what if the problem isn't out there? What if the problem is me? That one shift in perspective was like lighting a fire in a cold room. I started reading books instead of watching television. I began listening to thinkers instead of complainers. And wouldn't you know it, slowly but surely, my world began to transform, not because the world changed, but because I did. The ancient philosopher Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That quote struck me because when I changed my habits, my thinking, my words, freedom followed. Not just financial freedom, but the freedom to design a better future. You become a different person. And suddenly, the doors that were once locked begin to open, not because the lock changed, but because now you hold the key. So if you're waiting for your life to get better, don't wait for someone else to rescue you or for the weather to improve. Look in the mirror, because the major key to your better future is you. I used to sit around hoping things would get easier. I hoped the bills would shrink, the responsibilities would lighten, the challenges would soften, but life, as it turns out, doesn't work like that. The storms don't stop coming just because you've had enough. The world doesn't slow down for those who are tired. And one day, it hit me. You don't get better results by asking for fewer problems. You get better results by becoming stronger than the problems. It's a tempting trap, isn't it? To wish the mountain was shorter instead of building stronger legs to climb. But here's what I discovered. If you keep wishing for easier, you'll always be disappointed. Life is designed to test you, to stretch you, to force growth. The wise don't pray for comfort, they pray for capacity. And when you grow, the same mountain that once seemed impossible suddenly feels like a warm-up. I remember when I first tried my hand at sales. I was shy, unskilled, and terrified of rejection. Oh, I wished the customers were friendlier, the pitch was shorter, and the price was lower. But none of that changed. You know what did? I did. Asterisk. I studied more. I practiced harder. I refined my voice, sharpened my words, strengthened my resolve. And over time, the very thing that once defeated me became the arena where I found my confidence. Marcus Aurelius said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's the ancient wisdom. Your difficulties are not in the way. They are the way. The obstacle is the training ground for your future self. So stop asking for the load to be lighter. Ask for your back to be stronger. Don't shrink your vision to match your weakness. Expand your strength to match your destiny. The day I stopped wishing for easier and started striving to be better, everything changed, because life isn't waiting to get soft, but it is waiting for you to get sharp. And the major key to your better future is you. I used to think success was something you chased down, like a wild animal in the woods, fast, elusive, and always one step ahead. So I ran harder, worked longer, and still found myself tired and frustrated. Then I learned something that changed my life. Success isn't something you pursue. Success is something you attract by the person you become. Imagine trying to catch a butterfly. If you chase it, it flutters just out of reach. But if you become still, plant a garden, create a space of beauty and nourishment, the butterfly comes to you. That's success. It comes not because you're running after it, but because you're growing into the kind of person it's drawn to. Early in my career, I met a wealthy man who told me something I'll never forget. He said, if you want to have more, you've got to become more. And if you don't like what you have, change what you are. At first, I thought he was being harsh. But as I watched his discipline, his character, his generosity, I realized he wasn't lucky. He was prepared. And the world responded to that preparation. Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit." That means if you want excellence in your results, you start with excellence in your habits. I began reading a little more each day, improving my vocabulary, listening better, thinking deeper. I worked not just on my trade, but on me. And it was like flipping a switch. Opportunities began to appear, relationships improved, income grew, not because the world changed, but because I was no longer the same man approaching it. Success is not a reward for wishing. It's a response to growth. You don't get wealthy by demand. You get wealthy by becoming valuable. So if you're tired of chasing, maybe it's time to start becoming, because when you grow, success notices. And the major key to your better future is you. I've met a lot of people with big dreams, grand visions of what they want their life to look like. They write goals. They make plans. They talk with passion. But years go by, and those goals stay right where they started, on paper. Why? Because they never built the bridge. And that bridge, my friend, is called discipline. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like doing it. It's setting the alarm, rising with the sun, and putting in the work before the world starts making demands. Discipline doesn't ask if you're motivated. It asks if you're committed. And without it, the distance between goals and results is just a fantasy road that leads nowhere. I remember a winter when I had all the plans to turn my life around. I had the books, I had the ambition, I even had a new pen to write out my goals. But every morning, I found myself hitting the snooze button, making excuses, putting things off. I wasn't lazy, I just wasn't disciplined. That was the turning point. I decided to master the little things. I made my bed, I wrote every day, I practiced showing up early. And wouldn't you know it, those small acts of discipline began compounding into results. Benjamin Franklin once said, "Without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning. And there is no continual growth without discipline. A man without discipline is like a ship without a rudder. He moves, but never arrives." Discipline turns chaos into structure, potential into power. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It's the quiet voice that says, "Do it again." And over time, it transforms a scattered life into a focused one. You don't need more talent, more luck, or more time. You need to master the inner muscle of discipline, because that's the real bridge between the life you want and the life you live. And the major key to your better future is you. There was a time I used to think that life was something that happened to me. I thought I was just a passenger, tossed around by the economy, by other people's decisions, by chance. I blamed the government, my upbringing, even the weather. But one day I came to realize something that changed everything. I'm not the passenger, asterisk. I'm the builder, asterisk. I am the architect of my own life, and so are you. You see, if you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's. And guess what they've got planned for you? Not much. The world will always hand you the blueprint for mediocrity. It'll say, play it safe, stay small, avoid the risk. But if you want a life of purpose, prosperity, and peace, you've got to draft it with your own hands. In my early years, I worked jobs that didn't inspire me. I waited for someone to notice me, to promote me, to hand me success. But then I realized no one was coming with blueprints and bricks to build my dream. If I wanted to live a life worth remembering, I had to stop being a tenant and become the architect. One of the greatest mistakes I see people make isn't that they aim too high and miss, it's that they aim too low and hit. And sometimes they don't aim at all. They spend their precious days majoring in minor things. They confuse movement with progress, activity with accomplishment. They become experts at what doesn't matter and wonder why their life isn't changing. Now, let me tell you something I learned the hard way. You can spend a whole day being incredibly busy and end it no closer to your dreams. I used to answer every phone call, attend every unimportant meeting, and say yes to everything that came my way. I thought I was being productive, but really, I was just being distracted. It wasn't until I started asking a very serious question, asterisk. What's important? Asterisk, that I started seeing real results. I discovered that success isn't about doing everything. It's about doing the right things. And more than that, it's about saying no to the many so you can say yes to the few. A man with too many priorities has None. Socrates said, "Beware the barrenness of a busy life." Isn't that something? A life full of activity, but empty of meaning. A life filled with noise, but lacking in purpose. And that's the danger. When you major in minor things, you fill your time, but you bankrupt your potential. So what are the majors? Reading books that stretch your thinking, investing in skills that multiply your value, building relationships that strengthen your character, setting goals that stretch your vision. That's where your time belongs. That's where your energy should go. And if you're spending your days arguing over pennies, scrolling endlessly, chasing after the approval of people who don't matter, you're trading gold for gravel. Every day, the clock is ticking. You only get so many hours to trade for progress. So be wise. Be selective. Stop polishing pebbles and start shaping diamonds, because the major key to your better future is you. So now you've heard the truth, not from the world, not from the noise outside, but from within. Your future isn't waiting in the hands of someone else. It's not buried in luck, and it's not delayed by chance. The tools have been handed to you. The path is drawn. The only question that remains is, will you build? Asterisk. Will you rise above excuses, distractions, and fear to become the person your future is waiting on? You see, the real breakthrough doesn't come when the world changes. It comes the moment you do. You are the cause. You are the seed. And everything that blooms in your life will grow from the soil of your daily decisions. Start small if you must, but start. Pick up the book. Write the goal. Commit to one habit. And then repeat. Brick by brick, you will build something far greater than success. You will build a life of meaning, purpose, and contribution. Because in the end, the major key to your better future was never hidden. It was always right there in the mirror. Now go to work on you. The future is waiting. And it's not just hoping you'll arrive. It's depending on it.